For every client, it is a different experience, and I've got a range of people who are really excited about the cane and the skills that it gives them and the independence that it can give them, up to people who just really don't want to use it and aren't interested in it. And I think it is definitely a journey and a adjustment process that people go on when they start to use one, and especially when you're using it in public. And like if you have some vision, no, or if you don't, like just knowing like people are staring at me and like people are acting different because I have this, and it's going to, change the way that I interact with the world. But sort of balancing that with like, well, the benefits of it, of like it can be beneficial for people to know that my vision isn't great, because like I might be doing things in a way that doesn't make sense, or I might be asking for help with something, and someone's a little more likely to give that to me if they see that I have the cane and they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. You can't see that. So I'll help.
You're listening to Insight Out, a podcast about living well with low vision. Maybe you're feeling confused, scared, isolated, or disheartened about a recent vision loss diagnosis. Or maybe you've been managing your vision loss for a while, and now you want to hear from others about how to continue growing and thriving. Insight Out is your supportive space to find healthy and impactful tools to build and maintain a truly rich and gratifying life with low or no vision. I'm Matthew Reeves. I'm a legally blind psychotherapist and rehabilitation counselor. I specialize in helping people adjust to disability through my practice, Integral Mental Health Services in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm really glad you're listening. Please subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and let others in the low vision community know about the podcast so the word can spread to those who might find it helpful. And now, on with today's discussion. I'm really excited to introduce you to Hannah Kleinschmidt, an orientation and mobility specialist who brings a unique perspective to her work. She's been on both sides of the O&M experience. Hannah was born with albinism and grew up receiving orientation and mobility training herself, starting in middle school, where she first began learning to use a white cane. What began as something she was nervous about and resistant to eventually became her calling. After experiencing firsthand how O&M training transformed her independence and opened up possibilities, like attending college and traveling with a guide dog, she decided to dedicate her career to helping others navigate their own journeys with vision loss. Today, she works at a residential rehabilitation facility, teaching adults adjusting to recent vision loss, and she brings both professional expertise and personal understanding to every lesson. Hannah, I'm happy to have you with me today for the podcast. You work in orientation and mobility, which is a subject that carries a lot of emotional content with it, but it's also very practical, and that's what you do for a living. So I thought it might be a really good topic to get people educated on and maybe normalize some of those experiences that people may think that they're on their own with. So I really appreciate you being here. Why don't we jump in with your first experience with orientation and mobility, which commonly gets referred to as O&M. So we'll refer to it that way just for easy shorthand. But what was your first experience with O&M?
Yeah, I first started O&M when I was in school. So I um, have low vision, and I received O&M services throughout school. So I really started using white cane more, and having more consistent O&M in like middle school, high school, and learning how to travel on my own and all of that, and sort of learning more about orientation and mobility around that age.
Okay. And so you were pretty young when you went through the process. Would you say that was happening for you at a pretty early age, or is that a pretty common age for people to receive O&M training?
Say a lot of people who have were born with vision loss have O&M from a pretty early age. So it's fairly common. And then a lot of people who lose vision later in life will get it or in adulthood. So there's definitely a big, you know, O&M presence in schools and then also for the adult population.
Gotcha. Um, and since you mentioned that you have low vision yourself, what is that story? What is your vision condition and how has that impacted your life?
I was born legally blind, and my vision has been pretty stable throughout my life. I have albinism, so I have um, low vision. It's considered legally blind, but I can see like large print and see larger objects. When it's outside and there's a lot of glare from the sun, that's difficult, and things that are further away are difficult to see. Depth perception, that kind of thing is difficult.
Gotcha. And when you were young, and since you had been living with this since birth, it wasn't like something that happened at a particular moment. What was it like for you to be guided towards, or like, how did you even find yourself receiving O&M training, and how did you feel about it at the time?
Yeah, I had kind of always had vision services since I was a kid. So it was just sort of like, this is what happens. This person comes and takes you from class, and you go do the vision stuff. And so I think later, maybe like later elementary school, middle school, I sort of like got more of an understanding of what that means and like that, oh, like, okay, I can't see the things that the other kids are seeing, or I need a little more help in these areas. And in middle school is when we started like going off campus for O&M and learning how to cross streets and take public transportation. And so I sort of started learning the things that other kids would have learned or been able to do just with their friends or on their own. Sort of getting that experience through O&M.
What was it like for you going through that experience? Was that welcome or challenging? Did it make you feel different in any way? I mean, for a child to go through that is, I imagine, kind of emotionally charged, but what was it like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was difficult and I think helpful, but definitely, when you're different, it's hard when you're around other kids who don't need extra help or don't have to go do this thing after school that you have to do or don't need a white cane. Then it can be, another thing that you have to explain to kids, and, kids aren't always the most understanding. Um, so I definitely was a shy person and a little, anxious and sort of self-conscious about that. But I definitely started to see the benefits of it more, I think, in high school. And, I started to use the white cane more regularly and sort of saw like, oh, okay, like I can travel more safely and more efficiently if I have this. So I'm not going to be, tripping as much. I can walk faster. So it is beneficial, but it is, it was sort of an emotional thing to like start to be able to do, especially like using the cane around my friends and like in places where I hadn't before. It's like another, I guess, like a thing that I have to explain to people, and that can be challenging as a kid, definitely.
Yeah, or do you have any memories of resources or support systems or just even kind of the ways of thinking about it that helps with that? Because that is hard for a lot of people, even adults who hold on to that white cane for the first time. That can be really tough. I'm curious, at, as somebody who was going through it as an adolescent, what what you used or what you leaned on to help you get through the difficulties of it.
So my orientation and mobility instructor was very helpful and did connect me with some other people in the like school district who had low vision. And so I got to make some friends that way and do some more like group lessons to meet other people, which was really nice because there wasn't really anyone in my high school that was using a cane or had or was legally blind. But getting to meet other people was cool. I also like would go to like, some summer camps or conferences and got to meet other people my age, which was really helpful. I think starting to like realize that like, oh, okay, there are other people who are doing the same thing and this isn't so weird or like
Right.
awkward when everyone else is also going through that was really helpful.
Gotcha. So just seeing yourself reflected in a larger community that can be hard to find. It's easier now than when I was young because we have the internet now. But uh, yeah, finding a community was hard for me, and it sounds like you fortunately were able to get connected with some other people that were going through similar things. So that's great. How did your experience with O&M start to shift, or what was the path for you to go from being an adolescent receiving an O&M training to be an adult that's now certified to teach orientation and mobility? What tell me what the journey was like.
I definitely when I was younger started with not really liking O&M or being very nervous about crossing streets and like I don't want to do this. I'm not going to get on the bus. I'm going to stand at the street corner for a very long time without crossing the street. And then sort of when I got into high school, like realizing like, okay, I do want to go to college and I do want to live on my own and like, oh, I could get a guide dog. Like that would be really fun. I really like dogs and I'd love to be able to travel with a guide dog. So that was a big motivation for me in increasing my skills and like, okay, well, I have to be able to travel well and independently if I want to do this. So that sort of helped change my perspective on O&M a little bit. And like, okay, well, I need to do this thing to be able to get that. So I got a guide dog my senior year of high school and then went to college with the dog and I lived off campus and I commuted to school and I was taking the bus and the train and doing all the things that I wanted to be able to do. And I had a really great experience with my O&M instructor and getting me to be able to be at that place. And then sort of in high school, in college, I realized like, I think I want to do something in vision services and I would like to work with people who are visually impaired. And I was thinking like the options and I was most impacted personally by O&M and being able to be independent. And I felt like that really allowed me to like do what I want to be able to do and live on my own. And I really enjoyed, being outside, walking around. I didn't want to be like in an office all day.
Uh,
So, and that appealed to me. So then when near the end of college, I applied for grad school and went right into grad school for O&M.
so it requires a master's degree to have that certification. Is that right? Yeah. So you not only went through the high school experience and then the college experience, you also had to get a graduate degree. That's a lot of schooling. What do you feel like that set you up? Did that experience of all that education teach you anything that you feel you were able to bring into the O&M experience? It's a lot to achieve. I'm really curious to know what going through all those years of school did for you, and then if it helped you in any way.
Um, Going through school was helpful for me, and I enjoyed school a lot. I think it, you know, gave me the opportunity to meet other people and learn a lot and um, get like the college grad school experience, which in when I'm teaching now, I do work with high school students or college students or people who are wanting to go to college. So, sort of able to talk from my experience about accommodations and what might be helpful for them to sort of, this is the kind of things that you might want to be doing.
Okay, so that lived experience helps you kind of put yourself in the shoes of the people you're training so that you can serve them better. That's great. I love that. So what was what is and maybe this is a good moment to pause and kind of define what O&M is, because I want to ask some questions, more specific questions about it. But let's get a broad definition. What is O&M? What is it? What is its purpose?
So O&M is orientation and mobility. So I usually define it by orientation is how do you know where you are and where you're going, and then mobility is how you're going to get there safely. So it's teaching cane skills and street crossing skills and how to use public transportation, and how do you know where you are and find your destination from, you know, inside your own home to going to school or to work.
Okay. And I imagine that process, well, I don't know, you tell me, is that different for a young person as opposed to an adult or somebody who is dealt with vision loss their whole life versus somebody who is newly acquired some vision loss? Like, how different is it from person to person, or is it pretty consistent?
There are some similarities, I would say, with younger kids. It's a lot of concept development and teaching them just like what things are. And because if you can't see something, then you have to be taught it explicitly. So, like, other kids learn from seeing each other do stuff, but you're sort of teaching very specific concepts and skills to younger kids, and it can take a lot longer, like your whole school education. And then with older adults or people who lose their vision later, you're able to use some of their visual memories and sort of past experience with, like, well, I know what a intersection looks like and I know traffic patterns. So just applying that to how do you do that now non-visually.
Okay,
But
so
a
to
lot
use
of the
that
skill.
same example, if
Mhm.
somebody has never had vision or if they're young enough that they haven't experienced being a pedestrian, you're having to try and educate using words and experiences what an intersection is like. It's not something that concept is not built in. So you have to kind of build that manually. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, basically, yes. So, right, if you are born with no vision, you don't know the concepts of, yeah, what an intersection is, or even like what a car is. What does the whole car look like? Like, you just know your one seat in the car or just the side of it. But like, how many wheels does the car have, and how does it move? And so there's a lot of, tactile manipulatives and tactile maps, and using the analogies of, like, well, you're walking in the hallway and you're always going to walk on the right side, and that's sort of how that relates to, you know, when you're crossing a street and what the traffic is doing.
Got it. Oh, I hadn't even thought about the idea that for some people who have never had the opportunity to see traffic patterns, it may not be obvious. They may never ever even come across the idea of the driving on a certain side of the road, and that means and all the consequences of that in terms of safety and how to navigate that. So you have to teach that from scratch. But for people who have lost sight later in life, maybe they've even driven for decades. Uh, that's so familiar that you can skip right past it and go on to other ideas. Yeah. Once you have those ideas uh, in the mind of your students, what are the other kind of broad categories that you teach that unlock independence and sort of confidence? Because I imagine confidence is one of the most important aspects, or maybe one of the most important outcomes of the training. I'd love to hear about how you get from a place of uncertainty and unfamiliarity to a place of confidence.
Yeah, definitely. One of the sort of beginning skills is just how to use the cane and how it works, and being able to trust the cane as you're walking. So either if you've have low vision and you're sort of trying to use the vision that you have, and or you're have no vision and you're just walking like with someone else all the time, or only in a familiar area. It can be difficult to trust that the cane is going to find what it needs to find and that you're not going to walk off a curb or on the stairs or something. So getting people confident in their cane skills and that they're doing it correctly and practicing with that takes time. And then once they're, able to do that and able to get around a familiar environment and they're confident there, sort of moving that to um, street crossings and sidewalk travel and locating like store or their work or something.
Gotcha. Since you brought up the cane, I'd love to take a few minutes to talk about that because that is I've experienced it with so many of my clients that the cane is some people love being introduced to the cane for the first time, and it's this incredible tool that just opens up the vistas for them. And then for other people, the cane represents something very difficult, and it's not a great relationship. Talk to me about your experience with your clients and the cane and what the cane is there for and its role and what some of the challenges might be.
For every client, it is a different experience, and I've got a range of people who are really excited about the cane and the skills that it gives them and the independence that it can give them, up to people who just really don't want to use it and aren't interested in it. And I think it is definitely a journey and a adjustment process that people go on when they start to use one, and especially when you're using it in public. And like if you have some vision, no, or if you don't, like just knowing like people are staring at me and like people are acting different because I have this, and it's going to change the way that I interact with the world. But sort of balancing that with like, well, the benefits of it, of like it can be beneficial for people to know that my vision isn't great because like I might be doing things in a way that doesn't make sense, or I might be asking for help with something and someone's a little more likely to give that to me if they see that I have the cane and they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. You can't see that, so I'll help you.
So one of the roles of the cane, it goes beyond just the aid itself to be able to help to be that tactile uh, sensor of what's going on in the world. It serves another function of kind of identifying yourself to the people around you, which can be both very helpful and very difficult. How do you help people through that difficult aspect of it? And is that normal for people who are going through O&M to have some really strong feelings about this, and for an O&M instructor to be able to address that and help them process through that experience?
Yeah, it's definitely, in my experience, it's very normal. Have a lot of emotions about using the cane, especially for the first time, and sort of to work through that in O&M. And sometimes people will only use it indoors or only in a familiar place, and then it's a big accomplishment when people are able to use it in a new environment or bring it to work for the first time or explain to like people at school like this is what this is for. Definitely an adjustment period. And when I work with adults who come to a residential rehab facility, and so they're able to have other clients that they can talk to and um, hear each other's experiences and sort of work together. And I think having that support from each other is very helpful. But also, like, when I come to an O&M lesson, I have a plan of what we're going to do and stuff, but I'm also very flexible of like, if you need to just like talk about your feelings and like, I know this is a lot and it's okay. And it's very normal to have these feelings, and just sort of reassure people that like, this is normal. Like you're at this stage in your journey and that's okay. And I've had a lot of other people have the same types of feelings. And we're going to work through it slowly, right? Starting in either like at the center where, everyone is also blind or they're an instructor, and this is a very safe place to start, and then we will move, to a public street and stuff eventually, but sort of making it a slower process, I think, is helpful.
Right. And when your clients discover that you yourself have been through an O&M and you use those skills, does that come into play at all? Is that helpful?
I think so. I think I try to, be very upfront about like, this is what my vision is like. I will have a cane with me, or you might see me with my guide dog. And I'm happy to answer any questions. But I know their experience is different than what I've gone through, and I'm happy to share my inputs if they ask for it. But I think for some people it can be helpful, like, okay, like this person is doing something that like I can do it too. Like this is a thing that I can accomplish. Having sort of I mean, I guess like for younger kids, it can be helpful to have like almost like a role model of like, okay, this is what I can accomplish. I could go to college and, I can get around by myself and take the bus and all of that. So I think that can be helpful.
What would you say to the person who maybe has been living with vision loss or no vision for a long time? They feel like they've got things well in hand. They're feeling pretty confident. And I mean, you can buy a cane on Amazon. Like you don't have to go through O&M training in order to have these tools. What do you say to that person about what they might possibly be missing out on by not going through the formal training?
I would say that, and to think about, um, I would say that O&M is beneficial for a lot of people in helping them to travel efficiently and safely. And maybe you are traveling in a way that seems okay right now, but isn't necessarily the most efficient way. And, I definitely understand that O&M services aren't available in a lot of places, or they're very hard to access, depending on where you live. And it's definitely not easy for everyone to get O&M. But if you are able to, even get some instruction, it can help you be a little bit more independent. And like independence looks different for everyone. And even if that's just how do you travel safely in your own home and down the driveway to get the mail, that kind of thing, it can be beneficial. And I think there's some level of, you know, instruction that could be helpful for most people.
Yeah, I'm reminded of that expression, you don't know what you don't know. And so I'm kind of hearing that underneath what you're saying that uh, if you haven't been through the training, you don't know what you're missing. You don't know what useful information might be available to you. And I'm also noticing one of the things you're talking about is we talk about the efficiency of it and the confidence of it. And then also the safety of it. Just knowing that you are taking every opportunity to be safe. That seems really important too. Um, One last question about the cane. Are there different kinds of canes and how does that play into it? And what's the right choice for people? What do we need to know about the cane itself?
Yeah, there are lots of different kinds of canes, and different cane tips, and there are, newer canes that have all sorts of features and everything. If you work with a mobility instructor, they will fit you for the right size of cane. It's supposed to be a specific height. That way, the cane is interacting and finding obstacles before you do, and then you have an amount of reaction time before you walk into something. And there's different cane tips. There are lighter ones and ones that roll, and ones that people will use to tap on the ground. That way you can hear more of your surroundings and kind of the sound of that, like bouncing off of things around you. Or ones that are bigger and that roll on the ground. That way you're not like getting stuck in all of the cracks and everything in the sidewalk. But yeah, some fold, some don't fold. It's sort of a personal decision. I would say like an O&M instructor is probably the best person to like initially fit you for a cane and sort of be like, okay, it should be about this height. These are the options. But then, people could definitely do their research and decide like what material. There's, all different types of materials, and if you decide you want a longer one or one that doesn't fold, or, all the options.
Yeah. And here's a question I didn't anticipate asking, but I'm interested, so I'm going to. I know that some folks will kind of bling their cane and decorate it and all of that, but I also know that like we said before, one of the big values is that the cane is very recognizable by other people. What are your thoughts on personalizing a cane and making it your own by decorating it or painting it or coloring it in some way?
I think it's really cool to, personalize a cane and make it your own. And, if that makes it easier to use or you're more confident, it's more of an accessory that you're using. I think that's really neat. Or just for identification, if you're around other people who use canes, sometimes you just need to find which one's yours.
Which cane is mine?
Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
Um, but yeah, I would say the main thing is that it is still a white cane, and that it's recognizable as the majority of the cane is white. And there are laws in a lot of states that the cane should be white. That way, if a driver sees it, they're supposed to stop if you have a white cane.
I did not know
So that,
that.
yeah,
That's great information. That should be a law nationwide. We should always
yeah,
have
yeah.
the right of way for
Yeah.
sure, whether we're in a crosswalk or not. Not to say that we should assume that we can just cross the road at any point, but yeah, I like the idea that the cane gives you a little bit of privilege in that way. That's great. As long
Yeah.
as we're talking about being a pedestrian, does O&M training also include training for friends and loved ones for how to guide? What's the role for O&M in that way?
Like, yeah, it can definitely include instruction in how to be a guide for someone. If you live with people, or you're working with someone a lot, and O&M can explain what is proper human guide and how that works, and what it should look like, and also training the person who's blind how to train other people in it, and explaining like what this is what I need, and how to do it. But yeah, definitely, there's training for loved ones and family and everything about how to
That's
deal
great.
do that. Yeah.
What are in terms of being a pedestrian, what are the biggest obstacles? We talked about some of the emotional aspects of using a cane, but in terms of the practical, what are the aspects of the training that people have the hardest time with or feel is the most difficult that really takes that extra bit of help and assistance and guidance and mentorship to help them get past the hurdle towards more independence?
As far as like an actual like skill that we're teaching, um, I would say learning how to non-visually cross a street and listen for traffic patterns and to cross safely and straight across can be a challenge. You're using a lot of your auditory skills when you're doing that, and it can be challenging for a lot of people to only rely on the sound of the cars and like listening for what that sounds like and how far away from the cars am I while I'm crossing, and you're maintaining your cane skills while you're doing it, but you're focused on what you're hearing and, the traffic patterns and everything.
Yeah. While doing something that is, if you get it wrong, the consequences could be really high. That's high stakes training. So I can imagine that is daunting for certain folks. Maybe for other folks, it's pretty straightforward. They just kind of jump right into it. But I think for a lot of people, that would be pretty intimidating. What do you bring to the table to help people through that so that they can kind of relax into it and feel confident as they're building those skills little by little?
Yeah, there's definitely always an element of being dangerous every time you cross a street, but we definitely try to work up to more difficult crossings and starting with an area that's very quiet, and we're going to do it sighted guide. So I'm gonna cross the street with you. You're gonna hold my arm the whole time, up to, okay, we're gonna do it together. I'll walk next to you. So providing a lot of support, and or just, we're gonna stand on the street corner and we're gonna talk about the traffic patterns and what's going on and when would you cross if you were going to. We're not gonna do it today, but like hypothetically what would that look, when would you cross, which is an important skill of just like making that decision, because a lot of people are used to like crossing with someone else or like, oh, my mom always tells me when I'm going to cross, that kind of thing. But and definitely being aware of people's like where they are mentally and emotionally at the time, because if you're overwhelmed, you're not going to be able to do this efficiently and really focus on what you need to do. So like it's okay to take a step back and we can work on this another day, and that's all right. It is definitely overwhelming and it's a lot for people, but you know.
Yeah, but you never, what I'm hearing is that you make it a practice to never take people too far beyond their comfort zone. You're always going to go at their pace, so that they're not, so that overwhelm doesn't become crippling. It's something you let them kind of go and turn up the heat slowly, so that they remain comfortable. Maybe a little uncomfortable. There's always going to be some
Yeah.
degree of discomfort, but not so uncomfortable that it's crippling. That's great. So we've talked a lot about the pedestrian and walking, and we've mostly focused on street crossings and things like that. And I assume a lot of these skills apply in rural areas as well. But what about non-pedestrian skills, like for example, public transit, or another question I have is about like identifying what door you're going into and how to get to your final destination. What are the other, besides pedestrian work, what are the other categories that you focus on?
Yeah, but fortunately, I live in an area with a good amount of public transportation, so we have options for buses and the subway, or the commuter rail train. So we definitely, if people are going to be using that at home, or train them how to use it, or just expose them to like, this is what you would do. How would you look up a bus route? So if you have the technology skills to get on the computer and look up the bus schedule, and then communicate with the driver. Is there, are there audible announcements on the bus? How are you going to know when you're getting off? All of that. And then another skill is, asking for assistance if you need it. And how do you do that efficiently? And how do you find someone if you can't see them? And, having ready, like, these are the questions I need to ask. And this is how I'm going to do it. Because that's, sometimes if you're going somewhere that you've never been before, your GPS might get you most of the way there, but then you're not exactly sure which door you're going in. And so you're like, I'm just going to go in and ask, and hopefully, you know, somebody can give me directions if I need to go one more door over. And part of that is being able to ask for the type of information that you need. So if somebody says, oh, it's just down that way, oh, just turn left over there, you're like, well, I know, I need to know exactly what you're talking about. Can you give me these specific instructions? That way you can get the information that you're looking for.
And so it's not always about the skill of achieving something on your own. It's the skill of soliciting the help that you need and soliciting it in the way that's most helpful to you, which requires some being assertive and being confident and all of that. So you help people through that process. Is that, first of all, am I getting that right? And then second of all, is that how how difficult is that for folks, and to begin to ask for help? For a lot of people, asking for help is really challenging.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's definitely correct. It's a lot of what O&M is that being okay with asking for help. And it was one of the things that was difficult for me as a kid. And like, being like, okay, I'd rather walk around this grocery store for half an hour before I ask someone for help instead of, doing the more efficient thing, because I'm anxious about talking to people. So that could definitely be a lot of people's experience, but some people are just like, okay, like I need help. I'm gonna find someone, and I'm gonna stand here and call out for someone until they come and help me, which is great. And some people are very fearless about that, and I think that's really cool. I think, that's one of the things that the white cane can be helpful with. Sometimes people will just come up to you and like, do you need help? Are you okay? What's going, like, where do you need to go? Which can be nice. And also, sometimes people don't know exactly how to provide assistance, or they might be being too helpful, which, is another thing to deal with. But yeah, I think sometimes I'll do a lesson with like two people together, and so they'll go up and ask for assistance together, and that can be a little easier if you've got somebody with you, or like modeling that for someone. Like, okay, I'm gonna go with you. I'm gonna be the person talking this time, and maybe you have one question that you're gonna ask, or next time you're gonna be the person to ask the question. So like this is sort of the script of what you're gonna say.
Gotcha. You touched on something there that comes up a lot in my work, and that is trying to address when people are providing either help that wasn't asked for or help that's coming in the wrong form. Does your work address that, and how to interface with folks that are helping in a way that's not helpful?
I think that's one of the things that I try to address. I think most of the time, people in the public are trying to be helpful. They want to help where they can, but sometimes, you know, you don't need help, or they're not providing it the way that you would like to. So maintaining, I try to, teach clients like maintaining your safety and knowing like, okay, this person's just trying to be helpful, but I really don't want them to grab my arm and pull me across the street, and how to deal with that. But also, most people don't want to be like unfriendly. So, responding like nicely, like, oh no, thank you, I'm good. Or actually, could I grab your arm? Could I hold on to your elbow instead of you holding me? But also, having that sort of firm boundary of like, I'm going to say this in a way that's assertive still. And I'm, not, mm, sometimes people want to just do something quickly and not necessarily ask like how they can be most helpful, or they've never met a blind person, so they don't know like what help they should be giving. So sort of part of it is educating people about that.
Gotcha. Are there any other? So we talked about pedestrian training and kind of social training, how to interface with other people. We've talked about bus and rail systems and the training that goes into that. Although we haven't got into that in great detail, I imagine that gets pretty technical. What are there any other categories we haven't touched on that I maybe haven't thought about?
One of the newer things is I do a lot of training around like how to use Uber and rideshare apps, which is related to public transportation, but
Right.
interacting with the driver, and how do you find the driver and using the app and all that. And some people don't want you to bring your guide dog in the car, and how do you deal with all of that?
I've heard that there's recently been some legal activity on that front in terms of guide dogs in ride shares. This isn't a legal podcast, so I don't want to give legal advice, but would you
Yeah.
encourage people to assume that it is their right to bring a guide dog into a ride share or any public transportation infrastructure at all? Is that your understanding?
Yeah, that's my understanding of the law, is that any or most public places you are able to bring your dog into, including ride shares. And my understanding is that's Uber and Lyft's policy around service dogs. But it's definitely, I would it's difficult. Each driver, will handle it differently, and some of them, even though they might be aware of the policy, still really don't want a dog with them. So, sometimes people will text the driver in advance, like, hey, I have my service dog with me. And, sometimes the drivers still like don't want to take the dog. But there is a way to report that to Uber or Lyft because it is, against their policy.
Okay, so you can advocate for yourself if you encounter a problem with that. Um, okay, so that covers ride shares. Um, are there any other categories? I just don't want to miss anything, but if there's not, we can move on.
I think that like broadly covers most of it. There's a lot of stuff that we teach. Um, but yeah, I think that's good.
Okay. What, since you've been doing this for a few years now, um, and you spent a lot of time getting to this place with your certification, what has surprised you now that you've had some time in the field? What has taken you by surprise in terms of the experience of training O&M?
Well, I would say that my experience, each client is different, and I think they surprise me in their own ways each time we have lessons. But just the variety of people that I get to meet and work with, and how motivated a lot of people are, especially adults with recent vision loss, to learn and to be independent again and to do all of the things that I'm asking him to do, even though it's really hard and it can be very emotional and exhausting. I'd say just the motivation that people have is really cool, and to see that.
That's great. What is the most fulfilling part of the job for you?
I love when I get to work on a route or something that's really meaningful for people, and then they get excited about being able to do it. And like they've seen the amount of work that they've put into it, and like it's so exciting. Like they're able to cross the street or they've made it, safely to their destination and they're doing it on their own and they don't need me anymore. And I think that's really cool to be able to see.
Yeah, that's something you and I have in common as a therapist. I love working myself out of a job. It's a
Yeah.
great feeling. So I can relate to that. Um, Before we wrap up, I just want to make some space for you to offer anything that I may have not asked you about, anything that you'd like for this community of people who either are blind or low vision, or people who support a blind or low vision person to know about O&M. What are your final messages if you have any?
I'm just happy to be able to have this conversation. I think it's really important, and the sort of more emotional mental health part of O&M is something that I think we all deal with a lot in the profession, and I think having more discussions about it is important. And I hope that, people know that they're not alone in this and that they're going through the process just like a lot of other people are, and their experiences are not, you know, abnormal. And I hope people have learned, a little bit more about what O&M is and kind of some of the things that we work on.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom and your experience, both professionally and your life story. I love it when those intersect. It's a great thing. So thanks so much for sharing all of that, and thanks for being with us.
Thanks, of course.
What stands out most to me from my conversation with Hannah is how deeply she understands that orientation and mobility training isn't just about technical skills. It's fundamentally an emotional journey. Her insight about the white cane as both a practical tool and a visual marker of identity really illuminates why so many people struggle with the decision to pick one up for the first time. I really appreciate how she emphasized that everyone's relationship with the cane is different, and that's okay. Some people embrace it immediately, while others deserve time to work through complex feelings about what it represents. Hannah's point about starting slowly and meeting people where they are emotionally, not just physically, speaks to the compassionate approach that makes such a difference in this work. Hannah, I'm grateful for sharing both your professional expertise and your personal story with us, and for the important work you do helping people reclaim their independence and confidence as they navigate vision loss. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Insight Out. You're the reason this podcast exists, and we'd love to hear from you. You can leave us a voice message at speakpipe.com/insideoutpod. That's speakpipe.com/insightoutpod, INSIGHTOUTPOD. There, you can share your thoughts about today's conversation, suggest a topic for a future episode, or tell us about your experience living with vision loss. Again, that's speakpipe.com/insightoutpod. Insight Out is produced by Integral Mental Health Services, my private practice that offers psychotherapy for adults in Georgia and disability adjustment and chronic illness counseling nationwide. Visit us at integralmhs.com. And you can visit insightoutpod.com to catch up on all the episodes and to find links for subscribing in all the major podcast apps. A video version of this podcast is available on YouTube. Search for the channel using the handle @InsightOutPod. You can also find us on social media using that same handle. I hope you'll join us for the next episode of Insight Out. Subscribe now in your favorite podcast app to stay connected. Thanks again for listening.